There's a new rep in the House.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
June Speakman is newly elected. In fact, she was sworn in yesterday. A little bit of turbulence in her district caused a new election, and she won it. She's a veteran political scientist, teaches at Roger Williams University. I've known her for years, haven't seen her in a long time, so I get a chance to say hello again. Greetings, Friday night viewers. Know that on Fridays you watch a show that is taped on Thursday afternoon, so we can't really catch up to the issues of the day. Usually all heck breaks loose on Friday afternoon, or we have to chase it down on Monday. But it gives me a chance to kind of sit back and chill a little bit and enjoy our guests, whether we're talking about something political or our lives or funny or this one is just interesting politics. And I'm going to pick the brain of the newly elected rep on a bunch of key issues that maybe she would have voted for or could still end up voting for. So we'll have some fun, including this conversation we had last night with Joe Larissa, the local attorney who's looking to pursue the constitutionality issue of gaming. In the meantime, let me remind you what happened. Here's a headline from a while back. This young man got elected, and guess what? Never took his seat. Here's how Eyewitness News reported it.
Amid public pressure, Democrat Lofton Asensio says he will step down rather than be sworn into the House seat that voters in Bristol and Warren elected him to in November. Asensio has apologized for lying about sending out a political mailer on behalf of the Warren Democratic Town Committee, even faking an invoice when the committee members grew suspicious. Asensio said in part Wednesday night, quote, "I've spoken to lots of the people I hoped to represent, and it is clear that given my mistakes, I cannot represent our shared values at the State House as well as I would want to and as they deserve."
And that's just not the type of people we need to have at the State House. We need people with some integrity and some honesty up there representing the people of District 68.
Libertarian Bill Hunt, who lost to Asensio last month, says he plans to run in the special election to replace him.
Took the signs down and thought this was all over, and in a matter of 2 days a lot of things changed.
The reaction is utter surprise.
Andy Tiska, a Democrat who lost to Asensio in the September primary, also says he's running.
I think this is a chance for the voters to have another look at the candidates that are running and choose a candidate which is best for the community.
Well, guess what? That's a real-time story. Guess who won out of all those? Here's the headline. Dun, 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 dun. And I have to tell you, I was scratching my head over this whole thing. Well, sometimes following the careers of those involved in politics it gets away from me a little bit. June, welcome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I had June in Barrington the whole time, and I'm thinking, what the hell is going on here? You were an elected official in Barrington for a dozen plus years, right?
That's right. 14 years on the Barrington Town Council.
Okay.
And then I moved to Warren.
You moved all the way to Warren.
All the way, 1 mile.
And then you ran for office this past November for town council.
I
there
did.
and
yes.
got beat.
I did, yes.
Well, what is that the quintessential Rhode Island newcomer problem? I mean, you were elected and they had the full confidence of the voters for years and years and years in Barrington. You go down 114 a little bit, and what happened?
Right. Well, there were 8 people running for 5 seats, and I came in 6th. Didn't lose by many votes, but in those kinds of races, folks who are familiar to the community, I think, do well, and that's what happened.
Let's go backwards before we go forwards.
Okay.
You had all those years in Barrington. You obviously love public service in politics. It's in your blood. What would you say marked your tenure in Barrington over all those years? I mean, there were a lot of things that came up, and you'd had to speak out for.
Right. So in terms of accomplishments, I would say getting affordable housing into the community according to the state mandate, but in a way that was accepted by the residents and the neighbors. That was very difficult to do, but I think we were successful in that. We also refreshed and updated a lot of the recreational facilities, new facility at the beach, those kinds of things I consider to be accomplishments. And we did, we worked with transparency and accountability, which is important to me.
Yeah, I think Barrington is pretty well known as a pretty well-run community. So you moved down there for personal reasons?
Right, yes. For my brother moved in with me, and we needed a house that would accommodate us a little bit better than the one we were in.
Okay.
So we looked around, and I found the house of my dreams in Warren, and am delighted to live there with my brother.
Cute little place.
Yeah.
and you still had the itch to scratch, and you decided that you would run.
That's right. That's right. Well, and I volunteered immediately for the planning board, so I just had to resign from the planning board in Warren because of this new position of mine. But then town council came up, and the Democrats asked me, the local Democrats reached out and asked me to run, and I did, and that didn't work out, but this did.
Okay, so the representative-elect gets jammed up, and they set the new election.
Yeah.
Did you work hard to get elected, or did it, in other words, did it fall off the tree a little bit, or did you really have to pound the pavement?
Oh, no, we really had to work hard
Yeah.
because there was a primary on February 5th,
Right.
and I had an opponent from, the district is 70% Bristol and 30% Warren, and there was an opponent from Bristol, so the math worked in his favor, but I won that because we worked very, very hard, door to door, lots of committed volunteers. We spent a lot of time on those winter days walking and knocking, and then in the general there were 4 candidates, myself, the Democrat, and then there was a Libertarian and 2 independents, one of whom was Mr. Marshall, who had held the seat for several years. So it was a complicated race, and we had to work hard. I had to build my name recognition and then just get voters to turn out in the middle of the winter.
What was the big sell? What was the big campaign plank?
Well, I promised to work with integrity, which voters needed to know after what had happened with Mr. Asensio. They needed to hear someone who was committed to working with integrity and
Everybody
honesty.
says that.
Everybody says that.
I mean,
yes,
your track record, I think, is pretty clear, and that you're a political scientist by trade. I think has always lent a level of credibility to your public service. It's kind of an interest. I'd like to talk about it in the next segment. That the intersection, juxtaposition between teaching the science of politics and behaving in that world.
Yes, I'm very
but I
lucky.
think you've always been a very credible character.
Thank you.
Was that what you lent? Is that what you leaned on?
Well, the experience in Barrington, 14 years with no scandals, and all of my reporting was appropriate and honest and on time. Mostly, there were a couple of things 10 years ago where I missed a deadline, so I do think that gave the voters some degree of confidence in my record and my ability to act with integrity. I hope.
Okay, so you win that, and you were introduced to the General Assembly this week, and you were sworn in yesterday.
Yesterday, yes.
And you made your first votes. How'd that feel?
It felt great. It's a lot because most people elected in November have 2 months to orient themselves and reorganize their lives to do this service, and I had 1 week. So it's a lot to get up to speed on, but it felt great to be there finally.
Right. So, which club do you belong to at the General Assembly now?
Are there clubs?
Because we are very much into labels and examining the bifurcation of the Democrats and all of that.
So my answer to that is that I'm a Democrat, and my positions are in line with the platform of the State Democratic Party and the Bristol and Warren Democratic Parties, which are the 2 communities that I represent. That's probably unsatisfying to you, but that's my position. I'm a Democrat, and my values align with those positions.
But I'm sure that if you weren't in this interview, you would be teaching about the interesting dynamics that have occurred in America democratically between what is more of the conservative, classic Democrats and what is now known as the progressive movement. Which camp are you hanging out
Others have labeled me a progressive, and I don't reject that label.
Define it for me.
Well, I can tell you what I stand for. I stand for a $15 minimum wage gradually and taking into account the needs of small businesses, right? You have to be careful that's a bold move, it's a necessary move. I'm for a more equitable taxing system, so if that's progressive, you can call me progressive. I'm also for environmental protection, although I don't think that really cuts that way, progressive or conservative Democrat. I think all Democrats want to protect, everyone wants to protect the coastline against rising sea levels and so forth. So I am for a healthcare system that makes sure everyone has the insurance that they need to pay their medical bills. And so again, if that's progressive, I'll own that.
Got it? Good. We shall tackle some issues when we come back. Again, Representative Speakman, welcome to the House of Representatives this week after winning a special election in the Bristol-Warren district. Last night I had Joe Larissa on, the lawyer who is threatening to litigate against the state. You didn't hear much about this on the campaign, about sports betting, did you?
Not at all. Not a word.
You didn't bring it up?
Nope.
But now there was a vote this week, just prior to you being sworn in,
Right.
that authorizes the online version of this. Have you been paying attention as a political scientist to this constitutional question that still lingers for some out there?
Only just recently, right? I was sort of unaware of the controversy. I have gotten up to speed on it. It's an interesting question, right, about what goes before the voters and what the legislature decides. But I'm embarrassed to say I don't really know enough of the details to make a clear statement on that. Sorry to say.
I'm surprised by that. I mean, I'm not critical of you, but I'm surprised. It's very strange. I think most people would vote yes on sports betting. I don't know about this part. I think this is where everyone starts to,
Yeah.
although I think the people who support this have arguments that it's no more, look, if you have X amount of money to bet on sports and you lose it or win it fast on this thing or in line, it's the same pot of money. Other experts will say, well, the more you reach, the more trouble you can get into having it so accessible. Do you know how you would have voted? Because you were only a couple of days late to get this voted.
Right.
How would you have voted?
And I did watch the debate on Capitol TV, and I was persuaded by a couple of the arguments of folks who are concerned about the addictive nature of the phone in general, and then you connect that to another addictive behavior, which is gambling, although it passed with a very, very large margin. So I know it's a revenue source, and I know the state needs those things. It's interesting, it reminded me of the marijuana conversation, which folks reject because it's a revenue source. They say legalization should not be connected to revenue, but a lot of folks thought this should be legalized because it does help with revenue. So
you're so smart. See, you're able to cut through that stuff, which is baloney. The marijuana thing is all about revenue. It's being positioned as not about revenue by the government. There's safety issues, you know, comedy between Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts. I think it's a combination of matters,
well,
but the revenue is not exempt from consideration and motivation for that issue. By the way, where are you on that? Since you
I'm in support of legalization.
You are,
with all of the provisos that you have a test so that police officers can test for driving while impaired, where you make sure that it's not available to children. And I would really prefer that it not be put in the form of things like gummy bears and lollipops, which are alluring to children. So with all of those provisions, which is what the regulatory regime is for, I support legalization.
So if you were teaching a class on the challenge going back to sports betting and the constitutional issues involved there, it seems like you're going to have to study up a little bit. But it's an interesting place. You're just going to have to sit around and wait and see if they actually succeed at the Supreme Court.
Right.
I mean, that ship has sailed for you in terms of what you weren't elected yet, and you didn't have to vote on it.
That's right.
But what would you say to your kids at Roger Williams about this?
Well, I'd have to look closely at the language of the Constitution, and that's where the conversation would start, right? And again, if I had it in front of me, I could give you a more clear, and I apologize, I didn't realize we were going to talk about this today, so I would have come more prepared to answer that. But if the Constitution says it has to be voted on by the voters in referendum, then that's clear. Is the language that clear?
You know what? Great lawyers for the state and for the casinos say it sure is on their side.
Yeah.
Joe Larissa is like a lone wolf out there, along with a couple of national guys who kind of swing in on this. But he's won by himself before. Harris, 2004, if you remember. I said in real time that I thought that this needed to be approved by the voters because I didn't see it as the same class of gaming as the tables and the VLTs. Yet I would have supported it.
Yeah.
And so process over product really is the big controversy. If in fact they file the litigation, we'll see. After you get sped up on that, we'll get your take on that. While we're on it though, and what you would teach your kids, tell me the interesting. We'll get to a couple other issues in a moment. Tell me what it's like to be a professor of political science and be active in the game as long as you have been.
Well, I think each side helps the other side of my life. The practical work that I do in politics certainly informs my teaching, and I can bring real life examples to the things that the students are reading in the books. And then also the work I do, I teach public policy, I teach health policy, and all of that certainly helps me think through the issues that I confront as an elected official. So I think it's a wonderful marriage, and I feel very, very grateful to have this particular connection in my two lives.
I've always felt like you were a fair critical thinker. It's a harder time. When we first met, it was a long time ago, it feels like now, and the dynamics of politics in this country have changed.
Yes.
The adversarial nature of it has never been higher and hotter. How do you keep a level head and educate, recognizing that dynamic exists, but not getting too partisan and opining on it based on your progressive leaning?
Right. I work very hard at that because I acknowledge that in my classroom there are students of all political stripes, and a professor has to be fair to all of them and make sure that their views are given the same amount of weight and airtime. And I think you were on campus many years ago when we had a particular controversy with our college Republicans. It's just really important for students to know that the campus is a place where you have the free flow of ideas. You know, you have to be civil to each other, and I try to make sure that happens. There are, right now you're right, the conversations in the classroom are very hot. In particular, right now, it's the comments about Israel that struck a chord in my classroom, and we spend a lot of time talking about that. I'm surprised at how emotional that
with
issue
the Minnesota
is.
Congresswoman?
Correct, yeah.
And the president's response?
Yes.
That Democrats are anti-Jewish?
Right. And because students have the news right there on their phone, right in class, we sort of have this constant conversation that's being updated and tweeted out, and it's really a different world now. But I do try very hard to make sure everyone gets to say what they want to say in a civil way. I do encourage that because it can get heated.
Well, the campus environments have been very, very touchy. And it seems like the more liberal students are the ones who have forgotten, in some ways, that free speech matters. I'm talking about across the country, not necessarily any more specific, right?
There is a heightened sensitivity, I would say, on campus to the language that you use and the way that you speak. And that does come, I would say, from the left side of the political spectrum. That you're right about that.
Do you give that group pause when you instruct them about that dynamic?
Well, it's difficult because these are students who are talking about themselves and their history and their family, and you want to be sure that they don't feel uncomfortable. On the other hand, it's also important to know that they're going to go out into that big wild world there where everyone is not going to be so sensitive, and they do need to be able to understand that there are multiple perspectives, and they aren't always going to be able to complain to the dean or to to bring there's just not as much sensitivity out in the wild world. So I hope to help them understand that they will meet people with whom they don't agree.
You have had a tradition at Roger Williams for a pretty good college Republican group.
We have.
In fact, I had a young lady here who got herself jammed up with the whole last gubernatorial debate, and I thought that she was wrongly chastised by fellow members of the state Republican Party for her opining on supporting Joe Trillo as opposed to Alan Fung.
Yes.
Is it still hot in the kitchen down there, Republican-wise, at Roger Williams?
Well, they're very active, and in fact, they're bringing Jason Matera, who was the sort of star of the show, there at the end of the month, and I'm going to be involved in a conversation with him in a public forum. So they are still very active, and they're great. They just came back from CPAC, all fired up and ready to go.
That kid, he was a kid back then. Is moving in and out of high profile for some of his antics.
Yes.
Has he matured at all into a serious player?
Well, he's doing a crime show now, and he lives in Seattle, and he's doing Crime Watch Daily, I think. So that's a different turn for him. He did write 2 books about politics, one about Obama zombies and one about Hollywood hypocrites. Those are the titles. But now he's doing crime shows. So.
You only half roll your eyes. He was your
I
student.
did not roll my eyes.
No, yes, sort of. Well, all right, a couple of key issues in the state that this rep, Professor Cumbo, has to think about next. Political scientist and professor and now state rep June Speakman, my guest, admits to being part of the progressive group. You know, it's kind of funny. I would never put myself in that particular category, but what's really interesting, if you lay 10 issues out, it's an interesting test for those who see themselves as conservative or not so liberal, and you ask them a couple of things or 10 things that would be traditional progressive questions, the ratio of agreement is higher than the person who takes the test prior to the test would think it would come out to be. Do you agree?
Yes, I think, if I followed that.
Well, I just think there are some, for instance, I'll never forget a conversation I had with an old friend who's a MAGA, Trumper, blah, 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 who spent a whole bunch of time telling me how great Medicare was, because he just ended up on it.
Medicare's great.
And I said, yeah, by the way, that's a very socialist program you're talking about there. And I said, yeah. I said, well, That's not in your, and then, oh, geez, well, that's different. Well, that's different. So there's a lot of that stuff.
That's the problem with those labels.
This abortion issue that we have, the House passed it. You didn't get a chance to vote on it. The codification. I'm guessing you'd vote yes.
Yes, I would.
You would have. But the Senate looks like they could stall on this thing right now. Is it so urgent, do you think, that the Rhode Island legislature support this codification in its current form, given that Roe v. Wade really is not on the high burner right now? I mean, I know you think it could be, but it really isn't.
Yes. Well, it could be, though. And Washington is so volatile and unpredictable these days that it's really difficult. I would not want to rely on the current Supreme Court or the current administration in Washington to protect a woman's right to choose.
There would then be ample time, if it all broke the other way, for the states to react.
Why wait?
Now?
Why wait?
The conversation about quick child and some definitions there I thought were dismissed and should not have been. I mean, I'm a pro-life guy, though, who sees the argument. Why?
These are conversations, these are medical decisions. They are conversations that should take place between the woman and her doctor.
This was about protection of a wanted pregnancy and the definition of status of a fetus legally. That's what that question was about. I thought it was ignored by the legislature at their peril. There ought to be another law that is introduced, or a bill that introduced again to make that point. It has nothing to do with abortion. It has to do with status.
Right. And so there can be another law introduced to deal with that.
You'd be open to the conversation?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
What's your big issue? Do you have one driving home here? Or is there a vote here that really has you fired up?
No, not that I can see coming, but the budget is always a big thing, right? But that's a whole bunch of issues rolled up in one, right? There's a lot of policy embedded in the budget. The things I'd like to work on are housing, to make sure that there is housing affordable to all income classes, and senior services. I heard a lot about that when I was knocking doors. Seniors are feeling unwelcome in Rhode Island, and so there's.
But we have the highest prorated amount of seniors in the country.
I know.
And they feel unwelcome.
One by one, they do, right? So it's about taxes, it's about housing costs, and so.
But guess what? It's about taxes because I think they're too highly taxed.
That's right.
So you progressives better think about getting out of our wallets.
Well, if you're going to cut taxes somewhere to relieve seniors, then you have to find a way to put the revenues in elsewhere.
Oh, sometimes you have to find ways to cut spending.
That's exactly right. But not with a what's that big cutting? Yeah, it's a scalpel. You have to have a deft approach when you're cutting spending. You just can't hack away at programs. You got to make sure people's needs are met, right?
All right, well, listen, you are a wonderful addition to the General Assembly. I hope that as the issues come, that you'll give us both your scientific methodology thought process and heartily argue your positions.
Thank you. That's
hope
the plan.
Hope you're an often guest. Congratulations.
Thank you.
June Speakman, newly elected to the representation for Warren in Bristol in the House and teaching at Roger Williams. Final word when we come back. Stay with us. All right, so there are a lot of things on the table. The idea that there might be some sports betting litigation coming next week. Again, I'm not hanging my hat on it nor wishing for it, just thinking maybe they should have done it, you know? Anyway, meaning put the vote to the people. But between what's happening in Washington on a minute-to-minute basis, is next week the Mueller report week? I don't know, but we'll be on top of it. Of course, we'll talk to you at 3 until 6 on WPRO. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great weekend. Happy Paddy's Day.